This is a teaching of Hebrew Shalom Ministries, the Alef Bet series, Part 8, the letter Chet. Shalom, Shalom. Welcome to the Hebrew Alef Bet series, Part 8, the letter Het. This is what the letter Het looks like. This is how I would draw the letter Het. Vertical line, a line across the top, horizontal line, and it's all connected, another vertical line. Now sometimes you'll see, depending on the script, there'll be just a little notch here on the right, but it's not necessary to have that. And there you have your letter Het. The first aspect of each Hebrew letter is the sound of each Hebrew letter. The Hebrew letter Het has only one sound, which is the Ch sound. It's a hard H sound. If you recall, the fifth letter, the letter He, has a soft H sound similar to the English H. The letter Het is a harder H sound. Ch. When writing out a Hebrew word in the English, it's customary to write either a CH or a K when writing out a Hebrew word that has the letter Het in it. This doesn't always happen, but it is helpful. As an example, take the word Hanukkah, which begins with the letter Het, which is the hard H in Hebrew. You'll often see it spelled with the English letter H, indicating the soft H sound. I have a personal preference to use the CH in order to clarify. There's no strict rule since you're writing a Hebrew word into English. Really, it's a Hebrew word. It needs to be written with the Hebrew letters. But for practical purposes, we often write Hebrew words using English letters for an English audience. And when doing so, you can do whichever you prefer. I prefer to use the CH when it's a Het to distinguish it from the He. The second aspect of Hebrew letters is the numerical value of each Hebrew letter. The letter Het has a numerical value of 8. The numerical values are fairly straightforward, starting with Aleph. Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel 3, Dalet 4, He 5, Vav 6, Zayin 7, and Het is 8, following the pattern. As an example to show how the numerical value of words works, you have Av, which is Aleph, and a Vet, or Bet. You simply add the value of Aleph, which is 1, to the value of Vet, or Bet, which is 2, so 1 plus 2 equals 3. But in the Hebrew word Abba, you have a second Aleph, so you have Aleph 1, Bet 2, Aleph 1, so 1 plus 2 plus 1 equals 4. Each consonant letter has a numerical value. The vowels have no numerical value. So in my example, putting them side by side, Abba has a numerical value of 4, whereas Av has a numerical value of 3. Abba means daddy, Av means father. So there is a spiritual meaning to the difference in the numerical value between the two words. One primary meaning of the number 4 is that 4 is the number that indicates government. If you look at day 4 of the creation account in Genesis chapter 1, you'll find it was the day of placing the sun, the moon, and the stars to govern. Specifically, the number 4 indicates government through divine order, times and seasons. Since this is an introductory Alef Bet series, we won't get more into that right now. But there's a lot of talk about times and seasons out there nowadays, and if you want to get in line with God's times and seasons, the word Abba has a numerical value of 4. So one primary way to get in proper alignment is through an Abba relationship, meaning a son or daughter relating to their heavenly daddy, their Abba. Here is another Hebrew word using the Hebrew letter Het. You have Aleph Het, Ach. Notice I wrote it with the CH, which would have a numerical value of 8 plus 1, meaning a numerical value of 9. And this is the Hebrew word that means brother. So there you've gotten a taste of how numerical value of words works in the Hebrew. One word of caution here. It's meant to be fun and interactive. We have a living God who wants to build relationship with us through the process of studying His Word. However, one thing that causes a lot of trouble and a lot of confusion is beginners trying to deal with advanced subjects. This can be anything from 666, the mark of the beast, who's the Antichrist, to how does this fit in with the New Covenant theology. Sometimes beginners want to build a systematic theology, and when I say beginners, I'm not talking about human intellect or education. You could have a PhD, you could study for years in school. That doesn't make you advance spiritually. Another subject might be grace. The subject of grace is an advanced subject, and you see the hyper grace movement out there and all the debates, all the confusion, because you have beginners dealing with an advanced spiritual subject. So just a word of caution there. God works through discipleship, primarily a discipleship of the Holy Spirit as a relationship, a discipleship of a father, of Abba, discipling us as a believer. The Jewish and Christian religions are based on revelation, not by man figuring something out. This is one of the primary differences between Hebrew thought and Greek thought. In Greek thought, it's very man-centered and based on man conquering, man achieving something, man coming up with a religion. So definitely, when you read your scriptures, you'll find that these things are given by God, not figured out by man. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble spiritually by trying to figure these things out, rather than approaching it with a humble attitude of prayer, where you're interacting in a relationship with a living God who's speaking to you and revealing these things to you piece by piece. On to the third aspect of Hebrew letters, which is that each Hebrew letter is also a Hebrew word. Het is a wall or a fence. So if we look at the Hebrew word for brother that I showed you earlier, you have Alef, which is strong, and Chet, which is a fence, a strong fence or wall. Remember, in the Hebrew, it's the function that's the emphasis. So a wall or fence can perform different functions. It can protect or it can separate. As an example, take the Hebrew word for sin, which is chata. We haven't studied the letter tet yet, which is the middle letter in this word, but you can see the het is the first letter and the aleph is the last letter of the word. The het is the wall or separation, and the aleph represents God. So you see the separation from the goodness of God. In the word sin, the letter het is working as a fence or a wall that separates a negative thing. But then we can see the positive side of this wall in the Hebrew word ach for brother, where it's a wall protecting us. And then also in the Hebrew word chesed, which is the covenant love of God. And also in the Hebrew word chanan, which is the Hebrew word for grace, which in the ancient Hebrew had the concrete meaning of a protection around the encampment. Something that we would call the hedge of protection. When people speak of the hedge of protection, and the hedge is either up or down. So we can see in these words the positive and the negative functions of a wall or a fence. Which takes me into the fourth aspect of Hebrew letters, which the fourth aspect is the picture or the shape of the Hebrew letter. This is what a picture of a paleo letter het looks like, a wall or a fence. Here is a glimpse at what the shape of the Hebrew letter het looks like when you get into the kosher script, the written Torah scrolls. I haven't been getting too much into this because I consider this an introductory Alef Bet, and I consider getting into the deeper meaning of the shapes of the letters to be a little more advanced. But a little glimpse. On the right you have the letter Vav, on the left you have the letter Zayin. So the Het is actually a huppah that connects the Vav and the Zayin, the Vav representing the male energy and the Zayin the female energy. So you have a huppah, which is used in a marriage, bringing the male and the female together. That's just a glimpse there of the shape of the letter Chet. A glimpse to continue on in your studies, to encourage to dig deeper. There is always more depth in the Hebrew language. So this concludes part 8 of our Hebrew Alef Bet series, the letter Chet. Obviously there's a lot more that could be said about these letters. This is just an introductory series on the Alef Bet to introduce the complete beginner to the Hebrew letters. So shalom shalom and lehitraot. This has been a teaching of Hebrew Shalom Ministries. Shalom shalom.